mode.
Welcome to the second iteration of the RelSci Workshop. I'm your account manager, Jeremy Newman, and thank you for registering and attending this workshop. So what is this workshop? So this webinar was created because of feedback from you and other users that wanted a more detailed and hands-on webinar. I'll be answering questions that were submitted by users, as well as historical questions. If you have any questions during the workshop, please feel free to write in using the interface, and I'll answer any questions as soon as possible. So this webinar will be entirely live. So what does that mean? This means there's no script. I'll be working through every question for the first time. There's no pre-canned answer. So I'll do my best to explain how I'm solving the questions as I go along. If I'm not detailed enough or you need clarification, please do not hesitate to let me know. As always, if there are any audio or technical issues, if my sound is choppy or if you can't see the screen, please let me know and I'll try to resolve them. So before we begin the workshop, there's always 3 points I like to go over before any webinar or any training. So number one, we are not social media. So no one will ever receive a friend request or alert if you tag them as a prospect or mark them as a relationship or even view their profile. So everything you put into RelSci is completely private to your instance of RelSci. Number two, we do not contain any user-generated data. So no LinkedIn, no Facebook. Everything must come from a publicly verifiable source. And number three, we don't give out contact information, and this is intentional. We are not a contact network. Rather, the platform is best used to help you get that warm introduction from an existing connection. As a note on that, though, we might be adding contact information in the future, so I will keep you updated and apprised on that situation moving forward. In 6 or 7 months, I'll have more details. All right, so kind of getting into the webinar itself and the workshop. I'm going to start with some basics, then go to some workflows for nonprofits, for-profits, and then go into some questions that users have asked as well as historical questions. So basics. One of the biggest questions I get is how do I upload relationships into RelSci? So whenever you want to upload relationships into RelSci, it does kind of depend on how your account is set up. Are you a for-profit and are you uploading your own Rolodex? Or are you a nonprofit on a development team and you're uploading it on behalf of a bucket account? Or do you have RelWeb enabled? There's lots of different options. But in general, what you would do is go into My Relationships on the right here. And then you click into Add More Relationships at the top. And once this page loads for everyone, you'll see, there's various options that you have for uploading relationships. You have Outlook. We have a mobile app for iOS and Android, for iPad, iPhone, and Android phones. Very popular for senior partners, and you can actually sync your contacts off of your phone into the RelSci platform. We have LinkedIn, Salesforce integration as well. But in general, a lot of people have different CRM systems, whether you use Blackbaud, if you use Razor's Edge, if you use Sugar. If you have disparate sources you're pulling from, always use a CSV file. So to upload a CSV file, click into this and kind of follow the steps. And there's a template that we have that you can download. And so if we download this template and open this up, you'll kind of see all the information that RelSci can match for you. So the thing I do like to note, and I note in my general webinar, is RelSci only needs 2 types of information to make an automatic match. We need name info, which is here. And so that could be first name, last name, it could be first, middle name and last name, or it could be full name as well. So if you don't have a name separated into 3 columns like that, you can always just do a full name column as well. And then the other information we need is company information. So we either need company name, so this could be a prior, former company, or it could be a current company. And for a lot of the nonprofits out there, it can also be a board affiliation. However, if you don't have a company name, you can also match it on company email. So we take a look at domain, so my email, jnewman@relsci.com. We take a look at RelSci domain and match that to Relationship Science LLC. That would be my company. you have any security concerns about uploading contact information, please let me know. We have some collateral over here, and I can send you a couple one-pagers. So this is the stuff that we require for an automatic match. So it looks like some people have difficulty seeing my screen. Hopefully everyone can see the Excel. Fantastic. Thank you for letting me know. So this is the information we need to make an automatic match. Company info and name info. But all these other columns you see, all these other headers, phone, position, city, state, zip, website, ticker symbol, they all help improve the match rate. So if you have the data, then it's a good idea to upload it to RelSci. It'll improve your match rate and just increase that relationship capital number. Now, what would a file look like once you are done filling it out? One example would look something like this. So this just has a full name column. It's not separated into first name, middle name, or last name. And it also has a company column. And so what you can do is fill this out, make sure the headers are named correctly. So full name, company. There's no cells above the first row. There's no cells below the last row. If you have cells above the first row or cells below the last row, it'll create an error message when trying to upload it. And then you just save this as a CSV file. So save as, CSV, comma separated values. And what this will allow you to do is make sure that it's a flat Excel file. There's no formatting. It uploads to RelSci easily. Save. And then once you save the file, you can go back to RelSci. And upload it. So choose File. And choose the file you just created. Hit Start, and this will start the match process. And we'll see how many automatic matches we get, what doesn't match. Seems to be some technical issues on our end. There we go. Perfect. So we uploaded this list, and as you can see, on the top right it says you now have a certain amount of relationships that automatically matched. But if you want more detail on what matched and what did not match, go up here to this Match History button. Click into it. And so what this will pull up is it'll pull up an entire history of every file you have uploaded, what has matched, what has not matched, and also what are called possibles or potentials. A lot of people don't know about potentials, and I always like to talk about it because it's very important to always take a look into that tab. So we have 878 that matched, 29 that did not, and right here we have 213 potentials. And so what these potentials are, they're contacts or individuals that RelSci believes might have a match within the system. But we like to err on the side of caution. If there's not an exact match, this happens a lot with common names such as Tom Jones, Bill Williams, things of that nature, then we'll put it into the Potentials tab. And if you want to take a look at the Potentials tab, go to the top here, and click into it. And this will list out all of the potentials that we have on file for your account that you've done through uploads, Outlook, whatever source it may be from. And you can go through here and kind of take a look and see if this potential here, this match that you uploaded, matches any of the profiles we have in RelSci. You can take a look at the information, see if that matches. Maybe there's a spelling mistake in the file for you, or maybe in this case one of the symbols did not import correctly, so RelSci is a little confused. Or it could be a very common name. In this case, what I always like to tell people is if you see a name that appears and there's only one name, it is always best to just add it to RelSci. Most likely it's either a unique name or we only have one person on file for that name, so you can go ahead and add that to your relationship capital count. So that's relationships in a nutshell. I always just like to go over that because some people have questions on how the file is formatted, what you can upload, things of that nature. If you have any questions about relationships, please write in a question, because this is going to be one of the only times I really cover uploading relationships in this webinar. So which page can we find the match list on? It's one of the questions that came in. So the match list is a little button at the very top. I'll wait for everyone to see the screen. Right at the top here. So under relationship management, near the top right, be match history. If you click into that, that'll bring up that match list, and you can take a look at how efficient your match process is. If you have a lot of no matches, you have a lot of potentials. Maybe you upload a file of 2,000 and not enough people matched in your opinion. We'll take a look at the possibles tab and see if there's a lot of people there in possibles. There could be either an issue with your file, or maybe RelSci just cannot match it confidently, and you can go through and using your contextual background information, increase that relationship capital count. And the other thing I like to mention is some people have come across this, if you're trying to upload a file and you have really good information on someone and they're just not matching, like it's not matching for some reason, take a look at the block list. What this is if you mark someone as a no match, or you put them on a block list by accident, no matter what file you upload, no matter what you do, you will not be able to match that person to their profile because they're on the block list. So I'm going to talk about lists real quick. So lists are what make RelSci powerful, in my opinion. A lot of people underutilize them. You can upload board relationships here. You can upload prospect lists, coverage lists. You can upload corporations and foundations, or even other lists that aren't targets. You could do the Forbes Billionaires list. You could do a parents list. Lots of different options with this feature. So another question that came in, apologies, I just saw it. Why would someone be on a block list? There's two reasons why someone would be on a block list, or I guess you could say three. One would be someone intentionally put them there on either for your account, your primary point person, it was accidentally placed there, or three, if you yourself placed them there, if someone keeps appearing or matching for certain contact information you have, and for a fact that that's not the correct person. Let's say you have a relationship with person A senior, but it keeps matching to person A junior, then you would want to block person A junior because you don't want to have that as a mismatched relationship. So your colleagues might think you have a relationship with someone when you really don't if you keep accidentally matching the wrong person. That's why someone would put. So lists are super powerful. Every tool in RelSci can use them to a certain extent, and I'll get into that. But the process for uploading a list is very similar to what we just did. You'd upload a CSV file, go to the top here. So if you want to create a new list or add a file to an existing list, the process will be the same. Do it one more time, go to upload file to list at the top here. Click into it and hit choose file. It's the same setup, same list setup in terms of the Excel file, the CSV file, as the relationships we just uploaded. And I'll do a list example file right here. Once it's uploaded, you see the file name here, hit upload. And then this will bring you to the initial list screen. All right, so a question came in. So when you upload a list to RelSci, will those names then be available to RelSci clients? So there are a lot of questions in terms of differentiating between RelSci data and your instance of RelSci, if you will. So any profile information you see in RelSci, so any data we have on an individual, on a corporation, the connections between individuals. So if you look at, connection between Bill Gates and Melinda Gates, how are they connected? Well, are their spouses? They work at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, etc., etc. That's all public information. Every client of RelSci can see that information. Now, what's important to note, excuse me, there seems to be an error on. Try that one more time. But what's important to note as I continue on with the difference between private and public information is public information are profiles. So profiles of individuals, profiles of companies. Private information is your account. So if you upload a list of prospects, you and you yourself only, or your colleagues at your development team or at a wealth management firm, if you're working in teams, will be able to see that list. And depending on what firm you're at, you can also change the sharing settings. So let's say not only are you worried about the data being seen by other RelSci clients, which you do not have to worry about, it's totally private to your instance of RelSci, but you're also worried about other team members seeing your list, you can actually disable sharing so they cannot see your list. So the biggest thing to take away is any data you upload to RelSci is not used to further our database, is not made public. No one else can see it. RelSci, it's not social media. It's a database that you can utilize privately and safely. We're going to try this list upload one more time. I apologize for the technical difficulty on my end. Apologize for the wait. So the list did go through this time. And sometimes if things happen like that, if there's error messages popping up or if it's not loading, just try it again. And if it continues, take a look at your file, make sure there's nothing odd in it, so cells above, headers, or formatting. So if you have bold text or different types of highlighted cells and you saved it as an Excel book, that might be causing the issue. But here you can decide whether this file we just uploaded is going to a new list. So I could type in a prospect list over here if I wanted to, or I could even type in a client list. Or if this is a file to update an existing list, I can pick one from the drop down on the right here. And kind of scroll through and take a look at what list I want to upload this file to. So this is really good if you have an existing list you always like to update. A donor list, things of that nature, you can always just load in a file to the same list each time. Well, let's say we're creating a new list, so we'll call this a client list. There's a few things I want to point out. I know I covered this in my general webinar in terms of uploading lists, but a lot of people don't realize there's two functionalities of lists. One is you can actually upload your own field. So the standard RelSci list has names and detail. which is fantastic, really useful. But let's say you have information that's proprietary to your firm. Or let's say you have information that RelSci doesn't have, like net worth, whether or not they're a donor, if they're an alumni. You can actually upload that column, if you will, that field. So on the left here, it says RelSci fields. This is what's being included within RelSci. But then you have uploaded fields. So we have full name, we have company, and we have what I call tier in this file. Small, mid-market, enterprise, things of that nature. And you can actually click into that and then decide, okay, I want this to be shown within RelSci within my list. And not only can you do that, let's say you're hosting an event, or you're doing outreach, or trying to see if there's a connection to these individuals, and you're touching base with board members or your senior executives to see if they'd be willing to make an introduction. You can hit custom field here. And if you do not have this enabled on your account, just reach out to me and I can enable it. It's entirely free with your subscription. And free text is great because then you can kind of take notes on someone. But let's say I want to do a checkbox. I could do that and go down the list and check off who I've tried to make a connection to or contact. Or you can do a drop-down menu. And this is really good if you're hosting an event. You could 3 different options. You could say attending. You can do declined. You can do no response. Things of that nature. And then we save this. Hit save and continue. So the first screen you'll see is what are the successful matches. So these are automatic matches. And depending on how accurate you want to be, sometimes it's good to kind of go through this quickly to make sure we didn't mismatch anything. This isn't usually a big deal for individuals, but for organizations, sometimes it's smart to just quickly go through. Maybe you match it to a parent company by accident. Maybe we matched it to a holding company or subsidiary. That occasionally happens. And then hit save and continue. So these will be added to the list automatically. The one big difference between uploading a list and uploading relationships are potentials or possibles. So the biggest thing to note is in relationships, if you upload any file, possibles will always live in that tab we saw. But for lists, that is not the case. You have to go through all of the possibles or else they will disappear. So if there's 221, I would have to go through all 221 or until they're not matching anymore. So keep going through. It's like, okay, well, that's a match. That looks like a match. That's a match. If you keep going down and they start to not be matches, then you can stop and hit save and finish. If you don't have time to go through a lot of possibles, so let's say you upload a really large parents list or upload a huge list, a huge coverage list. The way around this would be go to the automatic matches, hit save and continue. Don't worry about the possibles at first. You have the list, and then when you have some free time, go back to that list, upload the same file into the list. And that way you'll have the same possibles appear, and then you can go through it again. Just kind of a way around that if you don't have the time to. Hit save and continue. And now the list will be created. So once the list is created, it'll actually say that the list was successfully created. It'll say save to list. And then you can click into view list to see the actual entities. And this you'll see kind of why it differs from a standard RelSci list. And hopefully this is useful and valuable to a few people. It'll have name on the left here still, just like a normal list. It'll have the description of the person, kind of what they're best known for. And then here's that uploaded field that I included. And this is tier, this instance. And I could edit this if I wanted to. Let's say, they're a client of ours, and we upsold them. We can change this to, instead of mid, we can say enterprise. Maybe downsold. Then we can say small. So it's customizable. You're not set in stone once you upload it. And then this custom field, let's say you're trying to contact these individuals or they're going to an event, you can use the drop down and kind of decide, okay, well, Gerald here is attending, line, not attending, things of that nature, and it'll be saved on it. The big thing to note, and a lot of people get worried about, is will these fields be able to be exported once you kind of upload them to RelSci or customize them? The answer is yes. If you report this out right here, once you report these out, the information will come out with the report as well. So just got a question. So are the tier and custom field fields completely customizable? So in terms of the custom fields, these are completely customizable. There's free text, so you can just take notes if you wanted to in a column. You can do a checkbox instead, or you can do kind of a drop down like I'm doing now, and you can decide what to type and how you want to go about doing it. In terms of this tier column, this is just an uploaded field. So if I wanted to, I could pull it up. If I wanted to, I can add an estimated net worth here. I could add a phone number. I can add an address. And all these could be added as custom fields to your list if you wanted to. They'll appear in that uploaded fields portion once you upload the actual list. So they're all customizable, depending how you wish to use it. So that's lists. And that kind of covers the basics of what I wanted to do. If you have any questions about lists, feel free to ask, since I'll kind of be using them within tools later on. All right, so I'm going to cover some interesting workflows or interesting ideas that. Okay, here's a question that came in. So in terms of lists, why would you want to do this in RelSci rather than your own database or solution? So it all depends on kind of your internal layout and how you do things within your organization. So some people find it very useful to be able to have this information within RelSci, for example, estimated net worth, whether or not they're attending an event, so they can do almost everything within RelSci. Some find it useful because you can actually create reports more easily, so you can report out whether or not someone's attended an event, what tier they're on, if you will, things of that nature. And the other big thing is if your CRM system is only local, if you don't have one in the cloud and you have different offices, you can share information that way as well. It's just something that we offer that's there, and a lot of people aren't aware of it. So I'm going to cover a couple use cases next, just a few workflows. If you have any questions about workflows or high-level ideas, strategy, feel free to write in. Those are entirely welcome as well. So I'm going to cover one for nonprofit and wealth management. So for nonprofit, and this is mostly for cause-based nonprofit or major gifts. So if you're prospecting, and you're starting kind of fresh from ground one, you have an internal list, maybe you want to expand your scope. The first step I always tell people to go is to donor search. And once you have donor search pulled up, and for anyone that doesn't know what donor search is, it's just a very broad look at who might be willing to donate to your cause or to your organization. So for wealth management, you would skip this step. But what you can do is type in your organization, or if you have a cause, you can type that in as well. So we'll type in the cross, for example. And let's say we want people only located in New York City. And we'll keep it very general like that. We'll even say that have donated more than $10,000. And so what this is it's looking at people that have donated to the American Red Cross, donated to similar organizations, as well as sit on the board of similar organizations. So this is very general at first. And so it's just looking for people that have donated a fair amount, that are within New York City, to organizations similar to the American Red Cross. So this is great. It's 420 people. That's, a large list. It's not necessarily actionable. So what you would do next is go to Add To and add to a list internally. And if I'm going too fast or the screen is kind of lagging behind what I'm saying, please. All right, thank you. Someone mentioned that the screen's lagging a little bit. I'll try to be cognizant of that. So this could be a prospect list or a broad prospect list, but we'll just call it, we'll call it the New York City prospect. And then hit save. And so now we have a list of these 420 individuals that might be willing to donate to our cause. That's fantastic, but we want to be a little more specific. So what you can do is you can go to PowerSearch, kind of the advanced search function of RelSci. You want to make sure you're in the People tab, top left. And then what PowerSearch does is it allows you generally to take the 4.8 million individuals that are within RelSci and narrow it down to a subset of individuals based on your criteria. Now you can also use PowerSearch to narrow down a list. So in this Appears On field at the top under Basics, you can put in a list. So if we put in that New York City prospect list we just created from Donor Search, that was very broad. We're just looking for people in New York City that had donated more than $1 to organizations similar to the American Red Cross. So it's broad, but it's also useful because it kind of expands the scope of, maybe individuals you were looking at. So I'm now searching within the New York City prospect list. We don't have to worry about location at the top because we already specified that they're New York City. We can look at roles, maybe only board members. But what I'm interested in is maybe take a look at their compensation or insider transaction. So I'm actually interested in, okay, let's say I'm looking for, within that list of 420 people, I want to see if anyone has sold any shares within the last 30 days. What I'm doing is I'm just going from $1 to a maximum of infinity. And I could be more specific than this. I could look for, maybe a larger insider transaction, a larger influx of money. But I'll start with this for now. Search. And this is just one way you can use the tool. And so this will search for individuals that are on that New York City prospect list, that 420, that did donate to a similar cause in the past, to the American Red Cross. And I'll see if they came into money recently. It looks like 2 individuals fit the criteria. So this is a much more actionable list, much more specific. We went from those 420 to 2. So maybe I could reach out. I could see, if anyone knows someone. But before that, decide whether or not 2 is a big enough list. Maybe expand this from 30 days out to 90. But we'll go with 2 for now. And so the next thing you can do, there's two options you can do here. If you have a large list, a large results of people, so if you have 10, 20, 30 individuals, what I would suggest to do is add it to a list. Add to at the top here, just like we did with Donor Search. Add that to a list. But since there's only 2 individuals, we can do it quickly another way. We want to see how our firm is connected. So our organization, or my colleagues are connected to these individuals, I can click See All here. I'll open up a new tab. And this will use Pathfinder to see from my firm who might have access to Judith Roden, I should say, who might be willing to donate to our cause-based organization. Take a look, scroll down, you can report this out. A couple things I always like to mention when I'm on Pathfinder is there's two ways to report Pathfinder results standard. There's the PDF version, and there's the CSV, which is great for manipulating the data. But let's say you want to hand this to a board member or a senior executive or your boss. What you can do is Control-P the page, so print the page, and it makes the report much more streamlined. So it kind of looks like what you get within Pathfinder, which is great. So you can actually hand this to someone or send this over as a PDF, and they can circle who they might be willing to make introductions to, who they actually know. And then, you know, once you do what you wish with this individual, with this report, you'd exit out of the tab, go back to that PowerSearch result on the other tab, and then do the same thing for the other individual. In this case, it's so that's one workflow that's nonprofit specific. Next, I'll cover kind of a workflow for for-profits. For-profits, a lot of use cases fit for-profit firms, but one of the more popular ones, especially with our legal clients and professional services, is using Visit a City. So if you're an executive assistant, or even if you're a senior partner yourself and you're using the platform, Visit a City is great because it helps make the best use of time on your calendar. So let's say you're traveling to Boston for a business trip, and you have a few hours on your calendar that are open and really nothing going on, and you're in the city already, you have 2 meetings, that gap in the middle. You want to see if you can efficiently. You can put in to visit a city you're going to, let's say Boston, as I mentioned earlier. And let's say we'll just keep it very broad for now. So just Boston in general, and see if you have access to anyone. And so the first tab is just everyone that we have that's associated with Boston. That is not what's useful. What's used for are these top tabs up here. So if we click over to My Relationships or Colleagues Relationships, go to Mine. Right? We'll list out everyone that you yourself have tagged as having a direct connection to. So maybe I'm like, oh, yo, Scott, yeah, I totally forgot he was based in Boston now. Maybe I should, you know, shoot him an email, see if he's willing to grab a cup of coffee. Or colleagues, if you don't have any direct connections, maybe you can ask one of your colleagues. You know, I could reach out to David here. It seems that he knows John. I'll see, you know, how strong that connection is. Maybe he's willing to make an introduction. I can grab a coffee with John. And then if you have no direct connections to someone in Boston, take a look at the Extended tab. So those are one-hop connections, and see if you can get an introduction to someone based in Boston. A lot of legal partners use it, managing partners, operating partners, with great success. So another question came in, how about alumni in Boston? So if you wanted to, Visit a City is great for quick work, so taking a look at just your relationships in general. If you wanted to take a look at alumni in Boston to see if you can meet up with them, you'd actually use PowerSearch. This kind of goes for for-profits as well if you want more specific criteria. So, for example, if they're on a coverage list or a client list or on a certain portfolio, or they're at a certain underlying company, you'd actually want to use PowerSearch. And what you do is, in the Appears On field, you'd actually type in your alumni list. The only reason I say type in your alumni list into the Appears On field instead of using the education section we have here is because most likely you have a much more comprehensive list of all the alumni within RelSci than actually RelSci does. Sometimes RelSci has difficulty confirming everyone's education. So you can put in an alumni list. I'll just use a list example. I'll use client list, and then you put in the location, so Boston. Select it from the drop-down. And the big difference here, the big thing here is only, I should say click only primary office location right below. What this does is it removes satellite offices. So if someone is associated with a bioengineering firm that's located in Boston, they might be based in Boston, or that firm might have a satellite office in California. And that's not useful information if you're trying to get in touch with someone and set up a meeting. You're not in California, you're in Boston. So always click that only primary office location. So another question came in, what's the difference between PowerSearch and donor search? So PowerSearch, when you do donation information, which is below here. When you fill out this donation information, let's say you fill out an organization someone's donated to, the American Red Cross, whether it be a university or even a cause. What it'll do is it'll pull everyone we have in our database that have donated to that organization or to that cause. So specifically have donated. Now the difference between donor search, what that does is it looks more broadly. It looks at people that sit on the boards of that organization or similar organizations. Looks at people that have donated to similar causes and similar organizations. Looks at people that work at similar causes and organizations. It's kind of a broader, a broader search, if you will. Yeah, and if you have if you have specific questions, like someone just wrote in, kind of as a follow-up to the visit a city question and how you can use lists to see who you can meet up with, feel free to reach out. We can always have a quick chat about it specifically, or shoot me an email as well. And hopefully I answered your question as well in regards to... okay. So this seems to be a big point. A lot of people have questions on this. So does donor search pull people who may not be donors? So yes, donor search may pull people that have not donated to your organization, or may have not donated to your specific cause, but they will be similar. So International Rescue Committee, if they've donated to the International Rescue Committee, they and you put that into donor search, you might also pull up people that have donated to the American Red Cross or similar organizations. So it kind of broadens your focus, broadens your horizons in terms of who to maybe target. And also with donor search, I'll pull that up one more time since a lot of people are asking questions about it. It's really only good for major gifts. If you're doing corporations and foundations, do not use with this. So instead of using donor search for corporations and foundations, what you would use instead is PowerSearch. And I do like to mention this always since it's not intuitive. I've been trying to get our tech team to maybe delineate it a little more easily, but look at foundations, click into this organizations tab, which is very similar to the people tab. And you go over to cause here for foundations, type in foundations, select the big bucket. So not a specific foundation, but foundations as a whole. And now you'll be searching specifically for foundations within RelSci. You can fill out the criteria that way. So a lot of people think it'll be under company type. They'll look through company type looking for foundations. That's not the case. It's under cause. And another thing people kind of fail to realize about PowerSearch, what it can do, is there's two places you can put lists for people. Yeah, I know it's not intuitive. I know, not intuitive at all. I'm trying to get our tech team to change that for foundations. But for PowerSearch, there's two places you can put lists. And let's say you want to take a look at who are the CEOs or CFOs at a Fortune 500 company. You'd come into here, you type in the Fortune 500, and let's say I type in CFO. And select, CFO. Make sure it's current as well, current CFOs. And hit search. And so you think, okay, well, this is pulling, the Fortune 500 companies I'm taking a look at for the CFO, so this makes sense. But once you see the results, it's not exactly what you were looking for. So as you can see, instead of 500 CFOs being pulled, or even less than 500 would be, that would be okay. Maybe someone else has a different title. It pulls more than 750. So that might be confusing. Why is it pulling 750? Doesn't make any sense. It's not even close to 500. So the big difference here is if you go up, when you do this appears on field, especially with companies, so it's taking everyone that is at Fortune 500 company, all the employees, all the board members, everyone. And it's seeing among those people, among those individuals, who has a position of CFO in general. So it could be CFO at a small nonprofit. They could be a CFO at another firm that's not in the Fortune 500. It's creating a large bucket of individuals that are associated with the Fortune 500. Then you're looking for people that have a position of CFO. To look for people that are CFOs specifically at Fortune 500 companies, instead of putting the list in the appears on field there, actually go down to here, to who are at this field, and it actually says company name or list, and you'd actually type in Fortune 500, and you put the list there. So this is actually looking for CFOs of Fortune 500 companies. This one, I wouldn't say this is not intuitive. It's just some people kind of get a little confused because there's two places to put lists. But once you realize there's two places to put lists, it really opens up a lot of different options you can have for complex searches. You can put in coverage lists, you can put in underlying companies, see who maybe is at, a relevance to both. You can really filter down some search results with this tool. So that's PowerSearch. I'm going to start, actually, I'll mention one other workflow that I want to note because it's very interesting for anyone that hosts events, whether you're for-profit hosting an event or a non-profit hosting an event. And I wish I came up with it myself, but I did not. So what you can do is you upload a list of your attendees accepted. And this is one that's useful if you have, that invitee list within RelSci with that drop-down I mentioned before. You can report it out, filter it, and then only upload the people that are actually attending. What you can do is actually, let's say I use the client list instead. You can compare it, same list against itself. And so what people have used this for is for seating specifically, or just even knowledge. So you take a look at who knows who that's attending your event. Then according to that, some people have actually sat people, tables, or whatever it may be, and has had a lot of success with that. So the issue is when you first do this, you'll notice that, in this case it says, okay, Daniel Pearson has a really strong connection with Daniel. Well, obviously, because they're the same person. To get rid of that, what you do is hit filter at the top here, which has a lot of different filter options. Some firms have used this to remove connections through their own organization, through a competitor's organization. If they're not interested in transactional and LP investments, they don't want to see those relationship types, they can nix that as well. But to get rid of direct connections to the same person, just this option right here, and hit apply. And that should get rid of all direct connections to the same person. So instead of seeing Daniel to Daniel, we should see Daniel to someone else. So as you can see, instead of seeing that, person A to person A, we now see various people's connections to each other. Which is great because then some people go through here and say, okay, it looks like Leon has a really strong connection to Mark. Take a look at Y. Load the baseball card. It looks like they have a lot of, long history together. If they're attending the same event, maybe we should seat them next to each other. Things of that nature. So, not my idea, a client's idea actually, but a really, really smart use, kind of outside the box use, Pathfinder. So that's kind of the last workflow I want to touch upon. I'm going to start answering some current client questions as well as historical. If you have a question that's entirely unrelated, high level, really specific, it does not matter. Feel free to write it into the question box. It can be as long, as complicated, or as challenging as you wish. I always look forward to challenging questions, so please feel free to try to stump me. So, starting with a couple questions. This one comes from Mike. So how can I find firms that have invested in software tech? So, when I'm looking at this question, what I would think is, okay, I'm looking for firms that have invested in software tech companies. I could look at PowerSearch. That's kind of a way to narrow down search results. Or you can go to Investor Search over here. And then once you open up Investor Search, what are you raising money for? Let's say a private company. What industry is your company in? Software. I'm looking for investors. Where should the investor be located? Let's say, New York City. And we could hit show results. And so this is kind of it's similar to donor search in a way, in terms of looking that might be willing to invest or give money to your private equity fund. And so it pops up organizations first. You can also look for specific individuals that have donated to software companies. Usually the people obviously will be a little more, they'll be wealthy individuals. So this is one way to do that. You can also do it through PowerSearch as well. I'm using People tab or the Organization tab in terms of investments in public holdings, that up, owns public shares in a certain industry. There's lots of different ways to kind of approach this question. It all depends on what you're comfortable with and what tool you're most comfortable with. If you use PowerSearch a lot, stick to PowerSearch. If you want to try out Investor Search, please feel free to use Investor Search. Okay, so this one comes from Tom, and this kind of includes some account setup. So Tom's question is, how can I receive news alerts on the person's relationships that I'm a companion for? So for anyone that does not know, companions are kind of, they can log in on behalf of an account. This is a very popular nonprofit setup in the past. We try not to do it too much anymore. So the question is, how can I receive news alerts on the person's relationship that I'm a companion for? You automatically actually receive news alerts, but if for some reason you are not, what you would do, you'd go up to your name at the top right. All right, so question in from Peter. So is it possible to request relationship research on an individual currently not in the 4.8 million? And actually, that is fantastic. I always mention this at the end, but I can mention it now. There is. So RelSci, one of our biggest points, is we allow you to do something that a lot of other, as far as I'm aware, software as a service companies do not support. We allow you to personally leverage our 400-person research team. So let's say you come across someone that their profile is not exactly robust, or the data looks out of date, or you just even want more donation information or investment information. Or you come across someone that is not profiled and you think they should be profiled. What you can do is go up to RelSci Services at the top here. Into it. Click Profile Requests and Data Errors. Then once the screen pops up, what you can do is, indicate whether you want to update an existing profile, create a new profile. This could be a corporation, foundation, individual, and then fill out the information. Our research team really does appreciate it if you have a bio or if you have some type of starting point that they can base their research off of to create that profile. And then you can submit as many of these as you want to our research team. It's included with your subscription. It's unlimited. And they get back to you usually 2 to 3 business days for a few requests. If it's a larger request, there's 2 points. One, it's really large, more than a couple dozen. Please feel free to send the file directly to me. It saves you time from having to manually input each person or each foundation or corporation. And it saves our research team time as well in terms of just looking at the file. And the second thing is, for larger requests, it usually does take a little longer depending on the workload and depending how long the file is. So back to Tom's question about news alerts. So news alerts. So whenever you want to take a look at your alert settings, go to My Alert Settings from the drop-down on your name. Excuse me. So you go to the alert settings page, and this is where you can really customize your alert. If you're a companion, the one caveat is if you have a lot of colleagues using the same account, if you change the alert settings, their alert settings will be changed as well. That is why we tended to go to a different kind of account setup where everyone has their own account, and everyone then is an admin to a bucket account so they can customize the alert settings. But if you're companion, you can change alert settings here. If you're just a usual user, regular user, you can also customize your. And this is actually a really popular feature for RelSci for a multitude of reasons. First, we push you third-party publications such as the Washington Post, New York Times, and our algorithms are a little more nuanced than Google Alerts. Also, we push you data alerts. We have bots on company pages and board pages. If some drops off or gets added, we'll push that as an alert to you saying, oh, person A is now on so-and-so's board, or he's dropped off this board and has been added to this board, things of that nature. We can also push you information about insider transactions, if someone's sold a lot of shares recently or come into a lot of money, or if someone's been involved with philanthropy as well. And so it's very customizable. So right now, anything that's yellow, I'm receiving alerts on my demo account. 500, the Forbes 400, things. Sure. If you want to turn these off, you can just click them. Once they turn gray, you will be no longer receiving alerts. What's great, a lot of people don't realize, is you can really get granular with these alerts. So I can get into a specific industry. I can look at certain charitable causes to receive alerts, specific topics if I wished. Maybe I'm really into looking at IPOs, looking at product launches. I'm looking at certain software as a service companies, and I want to see if they've launched a platform or a product. I can follow that for news. But for wealth managers and nonprofit, what you could do is take a look at your, let's say, prospect list. Prospect list right here. I already have set up, but what you can do is you open up, and I'll do that one more time. People can actually see. You go to the alert. Right here. And then in the top right, there's a button. Click the filter button. You go to topic, and there's various topics you can fill out. You could do insider transactions, financial results, things of that nature. And so for a wealth manager, for a development team on a nonprofit, what you could do is scroll down and find insider transactions, hit save, and now you'll get alerts on your prospect list if they've involved with an insider transaction. A little more specific. I also have legal firms and professional service firms that fill out alerts for employment changes. So they had a whole team. Every week they'd look at, okay, who's left what firm, where are they at now, what are the partners at. You can fill it out so that you actually get a bunch of employment alerts, if you will, who's dropped off what company, who's been added to a company. And they did that. They set up their alerts that way. And every week they'd get a weekly alert saying, okay, these legal partners or these chief legal officers, chief research officers have dropped off of this company or moved positions, and it freed up a lot of their time. Another thing about email settings, you can actually change how many alerts you get. I was just talking to someone about this today. You can actually change a few things. First, you can change the frequency. None, daily, weekly, or instant. I usually suggest daily. You can change what's getting included with the email. So you can actually get things in your feed within the RelSci platform that are different than what you get in email. So let's say you want to get a lot more information on your feed. You can fill out lots of different things on that second tab up here. But when it comes to the 360 alert source for your email, let's say I'm really only interested in that donor prospect list. Maybe I want to also do following, so individuals and companies I'm one-off following. And I know it's 1 o'clock already, and this is to 1:30, but feel free to pop out if you have to go do something. This is kind of one of those webinars you can pop in, pop out of. And so for email settings, there's two. There's combined and individual. Combined is the standard, and this will combine all your sources here. These two sources, and you'll get, let's say 10 headlines, I think is the standard. But if you wanted to, I know a few people that do like this, you can do individual. So that'll be get a separate email for each source, and you can change it to 100 headlines. So realistically, you can, if you have 3 or 4 sources going and you have an email coming in for each one, so let's say you have different prospect lists, you have one for corporations, foundations, or you have different coverage lists, so you can have 4 or 5 emails coming in every morning with 100 headlines about your prospects or your targets. So a question came in about alerts. So can different people get the same alerts, or is it different per account? So if you're creating an account or an alert for an executive or a board member, whoever it may be, and they want to get a specific alert, but you also want to see what that alert is as well. So is there a way to do that? There is, in a way. So you can be a companion to someone and your alerts will always be the same. But usually what I suggest is if you're an executive assistant for director, partner, usually you're an admin to just one managing partner, if not many. And a lot of times you're the one setting up their alerts for them. So if you're setting up their alerts, just take note of what alerts implementing and then set up in your own account. There's no way right now to have it that you get their exact same alert. There is a slight way around it, which is if the email address associated with, let's say, a bucket account or their account is goes to a box, for example, like goes to a listserv. That's one way. It's a little more complicated and requires discussion on our end to implement it. So, but if you're interested in that, that can be arranged. So that's alerts. I'm going to dive into a few other questions. I'll be sticking around till 1:30. Actually, I'll just answer Neil's question. His question was, I have a number of lists people I follow for various portfolio companies under different portfolio managers. Is there any way that I can get all these in a separate email so you can more easily forward it? More or less very similar to earlier question. And it's, if you have, let's say you're an admin for 10 different people and they have 10 different prospect lists to get alerts on, what you could do is upload those 10 lists, follow all of them here, and then change this format to 10, change the headlines to 10, 20, whatever it be. And that way you'll get an email for each person you're managing, if you're an admin or an executive assistant, and you can forward along that. Another thing to note, actually, that a lot of people don't know, is for news alerts, for articles and things of that nature, you can actually share the article with non-RelSci users. A lot of people do not know. So if I went to 360 alerts and open up an article, loads. You click in. There's actually a little share button on the top left here. Click that, it'll pop open a baseball card with a link. If you send this link, if you forward it or email it to someone, they can actually open up and see this article. I believe it can be opened up 5 or 6 times per. So for, let's say you want to send it to a team of 6 or team of 7, you could do that. But there is a limit to how many times it can be. As I mentioned, that could be for non-RelSci. So I'm looking at a couple of the questions. All right, since we're on the topic of admins, I might as well continue with a few questions on them. And as I mentioned, everyone's been pretty good about the questions so far, but if you have one that really is coming to mind that you want me to answer, just want to challenge me and see what the platform's capable of, feel free. So this one is, I'm an administrator for a number of users, and I've got one big file with all of their relationships, who owns. I'm from their CRM system. Backbone. Do I have to break this into separate files and load them into each account individually by going person to person in the admin count, which for anyone who's not an admin, you'd have to drop down here, and then you can log in on behalf of various individuals depending on who you manage. Or is there another way you can do it all at once? So this is actually a great time to talk about admin capabilities. Probably a lot of you that are listening in right now, admin, manage the account. So admins can log in on behalf of a lot of individuals by using that drop down over here. But there's also the administrator page. So if we click into the admin page here, you'll see various different tabs. The first tab will be all the users you're currently managing. The second tab is relationships. This will kind of list out the number of relationships for each profile, as well as the number of potential relationships. See if there's a lot in one account. So it looks like development here has over 5,000. Maybe go through that when I have some time. But the big thing here is you can actually upload contacts for your entire firm at once, or for the users you manage, I should say. So if you manage your entire firm, you can do it for the entire firm. If you manage a subset of users, you can do that as well by clicking Upload Contacts. And what this will allow you to do is to look very similar to that Excel file, and this is important for-profit. A lot of nonprofits won't use it. So it'll look very similar to this file in terms of contact information. But the one difference is there's going to be one extra column. You'll have all the contact information, their name info, their company info, position, etc. But you also have a username column. And this is where you'd put the user's username, the individual that owns the actual contact. So, if I owned a contact, I put my email here. That's my usernames. Maybe someone else has their own username. You can do. That's their username, and they own a certain contact. And what you do is you go down the list, or another thing that I used to do is use Control, find, replace, and kind of replace out their names with their email addresses and then upload it. And so this can sometimes make a very tedious process much more efficient. The only caveat is the file size limit for files for RelSci in general is about 15,000 rows. You can also actually change alert settings for individuals here. You can change if they're on or off. And actually, I just found something out myself. So to answer your question, Haiwan, you actually can have emails forwarded to you if you're an admin. I did not know this. I just discovered something. So if you go to the admin page and go to alert settings, you can have the email only sent to you, sent to the user, or also sent to the user and yourself. So you'll actually receive the same alerts that, let's say, your director or managing partner receives if you select this option. Not know that. I just discovered something new, so thank you for asking that question. And there's also this tab called Internal IDs. I discussed this in my advanced training webinar. For anyone that has not attended that, I kind of go over some of the new capabilities that RelSci has to offer that are included with your subscription and not included. This is one that's included. This would be a capability that's possible to export your entire CRM system, let's say prospects, contacts, certain constituents, coverage lists, whatever it may be, and actually import it into RelSci and match your internal ID to your CRM system's internal ID. This is useful because when you do reports, it makes matching the information more easy. So if you do a VLOOKUP or a match index, you can do that more easily. And where you'd actually see that, let's say I go to Bill Gates' profile. That up. And if you see at the top here, this is just an example of an internal ID. So there's green text, and for anyone that has proprietary data enabled, anything you see that is green within RelSci is yours, your own data. So someone has generated that themselves and put that. There'd be an internal ID. There's also, you can have notes here. You can take private notes, share notes. You can do contact details. So RelSci cannot handle an upload of 1 million or more, but we can discuss that further on. I do have a few scripts that I've kind of created myself that could take that 1 million and chop it down into manageable sizes of 15K files. But usually what people do is they take their top, 10,000 prospects, their top relationships, and they upload it to RelSci and mark the internal identifier as well. But we could, have a discussion about uploading, 1 million or 2 million records into RelSci. Might take a while, but we could. All right, so another question here. One has to do with Pathfinder. So I have a list of organizations that my firm and I are targeting, and when I run a path from my firm to the list, I see a number of pathways. But when I run a path to just one of the companies on the list, I see paths that weren't included in the report. So the question is, why would some paths not be included in the initial run that were included in the one-off? So really, this is what this is getting at is, I'm going from my relationship web to the Fortune 500. And when I'm doing this, I'm getting a certain amount of paths. But then when let's say I put in Microsoft, when I'm going through the Fortune 500 one at a time, it's not, there's more paths than I saw previously. And so what I like to note here is Pathfinder does have limitations. There is a limit of 300 paths, a hard limit of 300 paths for Pathfinder. And this is because it'll just keep computing paths and actually just looking and looking. It will take a very long time to load. So there's that hard limit of 300 placed. And what this means is it'll bring up the 300 best paths or the 300 first paths that it finds. So if you have a list of 500 companies, let's say, 500 different companies, you only get a limited kind of connection report, if you will. So usually when people are doing lists, I recommend not using really large lists, so no more than 300, or if you're really not worried about getting a comprehensive look and just want to see the best look or the best connections, then you don't really have to worry about number of entities on a certain list. But if you want a really comprehensive path report, then yes, the best way to do it is go one by one from your firm's relationships to a target, a client, whether prospect, whatever it may be. Now, that's going into another tool that I'll quickly touch upon, which I think if I look back through my notes, someone did have a question on what does discovery do? That's the question from Randy here. So what does discovery do? I mentioned this in my recent webinar. I'll be hosting, actually creating and hosting an individualized webinar specifically for discovery in August. I'll be sending out invites when that's finalized. The thing about discovery is a lot of people kind of pass it by because it's a big tool. I could spend an hour alone talking about discovery. So what discovery does in a nutshell is it gives you a top-down macro look at your firm's connections, your firm's web. Take a look by industry, by location, by role. There's lots of different ways to utilize it. For example, I have a client that's using it for marketing material. Load it in her firm's investors list, board member list, trustees, underlying companies, portfolio managers, and then loaded that into Discovery. And what it does is it takes a look at all of their virtual Rolodexes. So imagine if you can get everyone you have access to, imagine you can get all their Rolodexes and load it into RelSci, or just even look at it. That'd be powerful. That's kind of what Discovery does, but with the virtual Rolodex, those RelSci relationships. Then it sections it off by industry, by location, and by role. So it's a very powerful tool. I'll do a quick example here. Then I'm going to run a quick poll to see what people are interested in. So right now I'm just taking a look at first degree connections for my relationships, or my firm's relationships, so the 4,000. So these are direct, people I have access to. If I go into industry here, it'll open up a pie chart. You can take a look at who you might have access to in investment services and portfolio management. Take a look at holding companies, on private equity, or what a lot of people don't know. I think this is a newer thing. There's 2 new buttons up here with the new release we just had, actually last Thursday. And you can now do all industries or also report. I'm still learning these as well, so I'm not exactly sure what these 2 new buttons are capable of. But Discovery is very flexible in terms of what you can report. So you can report out here. You can click into one of these sections and actually report out other tabs here. There's organization tabs. Okay, what organizations do we have access to in investment services? Let's take a look. Report this out. You can filter it. There's the people tab if you just want to take a look at people. For nonprofits, actually what you probably best use Discovery for is not industry, but rather location or role. If you're hosting an event, take a look at who you have access to by role. If you're trying to expand your reach, maybe see where could we focus our development efforts on. We have a lot of connections in New York. We don't have a lot in Connecticut, or depending on what your tri-state area. That's just the first module, and that's just with your relationships. You can use lists, you can use organizations, you can use people, and you can also use the second module, which compares 2 sources of relationships. So that's kind of why I'm going to create, there's been a high enough demand for creating a webinar just for Discovery, which I will be doing. So I'm going to host a quick poll here. If you do want more information on Discovery, I can quickly discuss it, but there's that webinar that is planned. And if there's something I don't cover here that you want more, further detail on, feel free to write it into the questions. All right, so the most popular tool in terms of what people want more detail on is discovery. So I'll quickly go over a few other capabilities of discovery. And the other reason why I sometimes like to not gloss over this, but is the tool itself can take a few seconds to load, depending on how much information you're putting into it. Can you share okay, this is actually a really specific question. Can you share an international example of finding connections to a so let's say we use PowerSearch to find an international example for it. Say we want to find, especially with the news recently, let's take a look and see London. Look for organization. London. Go, and here's some satellite offices and primary offices within. So this is when you want to make sure to click only primary office locations, because there's going to be satellite offices, kind of US headquarters. Search. So an international example of trying to use Pathfinder would be, put in a coverage list or put in a client prospect list that's international. It could be your UK, it could be based in Europe in general, it could be based in Asia, South America. In general, we have decent coverage in Europe. We actually have decent coverage in Southeast Asia, Australia, as well as parts of South America. Africa, we do not have the best coverage in yet. Working on. But then you go here and you take a look. Okay, let's see. Maybe I'm a software as a service firm that's selling human resource software. I want to target Carnival. See all here and see if any of my firm's connections have connections to Carnival. So that's based in. It looks like I've marked that I have a direct connection to Mickey here. Currently the chair and board of directors, Carnival. Looks like our development account has marked that they know Philip Smith, who has a strong likelihood of having access. Stewart is currently independent director. So this would be an example of international use. Now, in terms of how to go about actually getting that introduction, that varies depending on your organization, especially with the time zone differences. It can be difficult. I have had people have success. I've had a lot of clients that are actually based in the UK or based internationally actually use RelSci kind of in reverse and target American corporations and American foundations. Okay, so back to discovery. So examples of discovery, kind of more interest on discovery. I'll talk a few other things that you can do with discovery. It loads. So the big thing people also like to do with discovery is you can take kind of a top-down view of someone's relationships, so their virtual role. So let's say you want to see how your board member might know someone. So you can always go into their profile and take a look at their relationship summary. That's really great. It gives you a lot of detail. See who they have the strongest access to. But you want to take a break. Look at the breakdown of what industries they have access to, what locations, maybe what roles. What you can do is instead of saying my relationship web, click that. And this will actually allow you to change the source from what you're pulling from. So if I did Bill Gates, for example, and waited for his profile to appear, I could select him. First degree relationships. First degree and second degree relationships, the difference here is first degree are direct connection. Second degree are those one-hop connections. The only thing I caution people when using discovery, especially the first module, if you put in a large list or a large organization and click second degree connections, it might take a while to load. It's pulling hundreds of thousands of connections, sometimes even more. And so this will give you kind of a top-down view of who Bill Gates knows, what industries he has access to, what industries he does know the most. And it looks like computer software, rightfully so. He has the most access and reach into holding companies, other consulting services, IT consulting and services. Location-wise, New York, he has the most access to, and then San Francisco, which makes sense, Seattle, and Washington. Let's see. But you can open this up, you can do by role. This is just one quick example of what you could do. So let's say you're having difficulty getting your board members' Rolodex, type their name in here and kind of get a top-down look at who they might know. If you need some idea generation, it's a great tool to use. So just a few notes before we finish, kind of finish up. I know we're coming towards the end. I did mention the RelSci Services button. If you have any profile requests or if the coverage isn't what you're looking for a specific project, you can always use that RelSci Services button. Or if it's a serious issue, please contact me and maybe we can do a larger project. If you have difficulty logging into your account or even a question functionality-wise, please email me or call me. I'm usually available. But if I'm not, feel free to use the contact button, the email, or the call. We're phasing out the chat feature. And our client support, who's based in New York with us, will help you through any functionality questions. They're also great. They really live within the platform. So if you have questions about the best way to do something, they're also great with that. And if you have any login issues or things of that nature, they'd be more than happy to help you. So what I always like to say is RelSci is capable of a lot, and a lot of people don't realize everything it's capable of. So obviously pathing is a lot of people got it for, and what it's, the bread and butter of RelSci is the pathing, the alerts. A lot of people like that in the research. There's other ways to use the platform kind of outside the box, or even tools that people aren't very familiar with, like discovery, due diligence, which I didn't cover too much today, investor search. Lots of ways to use the platform to solve problems, to kind of open up different avenues, whether it be for fundraising, for private equity fund, for nonprofit, for wealth managers, or even if you're a corporation or university. So thank you everyone for joining me today. If you have specific questions or questions about your account, or if there's a capability you saw during today's webinar that you're like, oh, what is that? Like, I want that, or I don't have that. Shoot me an email, give me a quick call. Be happy to schedule something or hop on a quick call with you, and we can work it out or kind of reset up your account. As always, it was a pleasure, and everyone have a great rest of the week.